Hello, hello. So we're just waiting here on trying to see when they're gonna release it. So I've got Geomeda's pages up, trying to see how they're gonna stream this. So we will put that up when it comes. Let's see, how is everybody doing today? We got Stormworks Gamer, how's it going? Joy of the Wolves, Ron Weasley, how's it going? Emma Keys, MCFS Gamer, how are you? Axel, what's going on? Citrus, how are you? Stalemate, how are you? Are they on Steam? Let's check it. Seeing if they put a link, so. Do they put a link on the store page is the question. There it is, right here. So I've got it up. Okay, good. So I'll bring that up. Thank you for letting me know that. What's going on, Petsy? Sanders, how are you? This is message business. What is this message business? Alright, so countdown looks like 6 minutes, 20 seconds. So hopefully it'll be on time. That would be nice. Dare I put up a poll? Alright, a little poll up there. Free, I'll shut it when they start. Defeats the purpose. I'm hoping it's phishing, we'll see. I had a couple conspiracy theories on Reddit about space, but we'll see. I have 2 cups of coffee, so we're good to go here. It said it was only going to be 30 minutes long. We shall see. My evidence of why I would find it not to be space. Now, some people said, oh, they said they never do space. There's been a bunch of things they said they'd never do, they've done. You know, there are things which you think aren't possible until you start working on it, and you're like, yeah, we can do this. You know, So that's not really my reason why I wouldn't think it'd be space. One of the reasons I wouldn't think it was space is they just culled the area to be, they reduced it to 256 by 256. You know, they have a lot of people complaining about multiplayer. I can't imagine that would make multiplayer better by adding something like fishing. They're using the pre-existing infrastructure of the game. Fishing, of course, you tend to use boats, unless you want to go fish with a helicopter like some would probably do in Stormworks. But the thought process, you could use the inbuilt systems already, so you're still building boats the same. You're still out on the ocean. Because the map is now limited to 256, 256, you can still, you know, because of the slower speed of boats, the traversal, you can still traverse within the normal range. You know, so that would be one thought of, you know, the potential ease and possibility. They said they've been working on it for years, which would make sense. They added physicalized fish, which could be a precursor. They've added other physicalized animals, which could lead to some sort of animal interaction as well with that. You know, we already have some of the mechanics like hoppers, which can be used with fish. So I think, you know, the underlying infrastructure is there. So that would be my guess. But again, you know, it could be something different, certainly. But that would be my guess. You know, I'd be happy if there was a bunch of different things, but... Yeah, space could be cool to a certain extent, I think. You know, the engineering element, of course, I think the issues are, is it engaging without something to do in space? So are you going to put up a moon? Unlikely. You know, are you going to put up an asteroid? Probably unlikely. You know, you could do it kind of space engineer style, where they had a couple asteroids, you go up their mine, bring back precious materials that sell for a boatload. You know, there's already some complaints of people of things being too complicated, which I think in an engineering game is you can never get too complicated. But you know, do they add orbital mechanics? Highly unlikely. What's going on, Yeet? You know, if it was space, I would enjoy the fact that we'd probably get colder upper atmosphere, lower air densities, potentially some stuff with that would be kind of cool with airplanes, but, you know, I think it's very risky to do a space DLC. We'll see, you know. Hopefully, volume is off for the dev stream. Do they have synthwave on themselves? Sounds like the devs might have synthwave on too. No, they just have on some epic music here. You guys can see the announcement correctly, right? Just still shows weekly update for me in the top left. I just want to make sure, just somebody confirm that it's showing the stream starting soon screen for me, because I always see a delay, so. "43 seconds. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's I don't know why it shows my delay is like I see the longest delay, which is kind of silly, because it's like I can still see back before I put this on. So, all right, we'll end up poll here. So it looks like fishing is the top, followed by space, transpo, and new biome around there. Those are just some ideas thrown out. Good, excellent. Yep. Yeah, it's my delay is super long, you know, so I don't know why they do that. I might be able to change that in options. All right, let's mute the synth wave. Looks like space.
And welcome back. That was the trailer for the new DLC, and the release date, I don't know if I've already said, is, let me get that up. I have that written down, is October the 12th. So that's going to be out October the 12th, which is how many weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 weeks, 7 weeks. October the 12th. Um, And yeah, let's go through the notes on exactly where the features are, and then we'll get to some questions. So yeah, the plan is we're just going to go through the notes first. Let me just bring them up. Awesome. So the footage on the screen right now is, I'll just turn it down a little bit on the volume. And this is a pre-recorded video that we did yesterday, and it's just because I cannot talk and play the game at the same time. I can't do two things at once. So we did this pre-recorded footage yesterday, and this is ourselves in a rocket, and yeah, we're taking off from a new space base that we are adding on the Sawyer Isles, and it's just a launch platform. Um, and indeed, we're going to ascend up through the atmosphere and enter space. And this is a continuous simulation. So previously, you just kind of go up like an infinite distance, and nothing would happen. I think you saw there in the on the monitor there was a kind of a transition there, but this is a kind of a gradual transition that depends on your altitude. And as you get higher in the altitude, the atmosphere changes, the lighting changes. As you get high enough, you start to see the horizon and the planet moving away. There's a real-time atmospheric shading of the Earth planet. And so you kind of see the atmosphere, and that's with the day-night cycle as well. So as the day-night cycle goes around, you see the lighting of the planet change there, so you can see what the day-night cycle is on Earth. As well as that, there's the other aspects of that as well. So as you get higher, you can see here the atmosphere is thinning and thinning, and that's happening mechanically as well. The pressure is reducing, and so the air pressure drops away. You can see there the horizon starting to show on the video. And then of course there's gravity as well, so the gravity is also dropping off as you get higher and higher and higher up. So you kind of got this kind of upper atmosphere, and of course that continues all the way through into space. As you go higher up into space, you will eventually hit a kind of a geostationary orbit if you go high enough. If you don't want to go that high, you want to have a lower orbit, you can get your horizontal motion going, and if you rotate laterally, you move laterally, so horizontally, you increase the speed there, then of course you can achieve a lower orbit as well, like like you might expect in other space games or in real life. So yeah, we're making good progress into space here. You can see the atmosphere is dropping away, and above, because it's nighttime right now, you can't see the moon. We're actually in the shadow of the Earth right now. The moon's above us. It's kind of eclipsed. I guess that's kind of a side effect of how the lighting works. But in a few moments, the sun will rise, and we'll be able to see the moon above us. And that's another place you can go. So of course you can go into space, go into orbit, and whatever else. And then of course you can continue on a journey to the moon. You can descend to the moon onto the lunar surface, and the surface of the moon is, I think it's 30 kilometers by 30 kilometers, so a total of 900 square kilometers. And this is dust, it's craters, it's gorges, there's caves as well. And so yeah, you've got that stuff as well. I think that the gravity level on the moon is about normal of what you expect. You see the atmosphere shading changing there, and of course we can see the moon above. Um, and yeah, that's responding to the sun. So there's quite a few engine level changes there. Let's go through the list. So of course we've got the atmosphere and space. You can see here with this rocket there is 4 engines on the bottom. These are new engines. These are liquid fuel engines. So they're powered by compressed hydrogen and compressed oxygen. And they of course burn those 2 ingredients and produce a liquid fuel jet. They are gimbal controlled as well, so they've got a little bit of tilt to them that can be controlled for thrust vectoring. And they're probably kind of like your main use of engines in space. We've also got a new electrolysis component for generating liquid oxygen and hydrogen, and of course you can separate water with electrolysis to produce the two elements of the fuel. And this in fact kind of incorporates into our gas and fluid rework, because obviously we've added the compression system, but we've also separated air into its constituent parts as well. So you've got oxygen, you've got carbon dioxide, you've got nitrogen, and of course you've got hydrogen as well. And they're treated individually and uniquely. That is a base game changes. So some of these changes are of course going into the base game, and they'll just become part of Stormworks, DLC or not. And I think that's quite important because we don't want to be separating the community into 2 games. I think it's important that the creations can be spawned in both games, even if you're not able to access the kind of the space biome, and perhaps some of the components will be disabled, like liquid fuel rockets, for example. But ultimately, it's kind of keeping the game consistent, the rules consistent. So we wanted to make the new fluid changes in the base game as well. So there's the fluid and gas types that we have changed. The compressed gases are also useful for the RCS thrusters as well. So they're small thrusters that release compressed gas in order to they've got little funnels on them, and you can operate them directionally, and that allows us to do smaller motions. So they're not powerful, but they are great for maneuvering, and they have, I think, 5 nozzles on each thruster. They've got 4 nozzles on each thruster, but you can fire all 4 together to kind of give you a 5th direction. So you can do your rotation and translation with those, and we've also kind of put some inbuilt logic to them as well to make them a bit easier to use. So you can operate them on a composite channel, and you can signal them to either fire independently if you want custom control, or you can just tell them to do the translation operations you want. I want my vehicle to move left, right, up, down, or rotate, and there's various composite channels to send those commands through, so it makes it a lot easier and a lot more stable. We've also got new kind of gyroscopic actuators. They're wheels that spin, and they'll accelerate or decelerate in order to create rotational forces. That's obviously just generally useful, but particularly useful for rotating in space where you can't have like fins and things, because obviously there's no aerodynamics in space, and of course all the stuff you'd expect to be missing in space is missing. Obviously there's no weather, there's no aerodynamics, and so on. As well as that, we've obviously got new sensors. GPS also doesn't work in space, obviously, as is a realism feature. GPS is only available on Earth, so as you go into space you need to rely on other ways of navigating. We're adding a new astronomy sensor that gives you our kind of astronomy coordinates system to position yourself in space. And of course something else we're still working on is new space missions. But we'll announce more on that in the future. But yes, there will be a new series of missions to be included in the DLC as well. There are some engine changes, as we've previously discussed. There's the compressed gases, which is very, very useful for space, but also very useful just generally in the game. And that allows you to basically push lots of gas into a container, and as you do, the pressure inside that container will increase. So it's largely based on kind of how compression works in real life. You've just got, if you compress the same amount of gas into half of the space, the pressure is doubled, and so on. And in fact, all pressure is then driven by the gas pressure. So if you then pump water into a compartment, if there's air already in that compartment, then that air will get compressed as the water displaces it, and as that air gets compressed, it generates the pressure inside that compartment. Most of the vehicles just work as they are, but we have added some new components with this to make it a bit easier to use. And it's just a more powerful system as well. So you've got some new tools for these things. The video has jumped ahead. There's a little cut here that we've put in, and we're now gone over to the moon. The journey time is 15-20 minutes, I think. So I think in real life, I think it's a lot longer. It's hours and hours. And what we've done is we've moved the moon a little bit closer to the Earth for gameplay reasons, and obviously this is something we do from time to time, where we take a break from real life and just modify things for making the gameplay easier and simpler and more fun. So yeah, there was no point in making players spend 10 hours traveling to the moon. So we've modified that transition so it's a shorter distance. As you can see here, we're now nearing the moon, and we'll start to transition onto the surface soon. And as we descend, we'll arrive on this 900 square kilometer lunar surface. So yeah, we've added these new gas components, and there's relief valves now for fluid and gases, and this just allows you to vent or refill a container freely with the outside atmosphere. So if you've got a lot of pressurized gas in a container, you can vent that gas off, and likewise, if you've got vacuum in the container, you can let gas in. And this obviously is for plumbing reasons, right? It helps you relieve deadlock and delta P where it's affecting flow, and that'll be useful for getting your systems to work. But otherwise, we have been testing vehicles, and it generally still works in the way you'd expect. Out the way it previously worked for vehicles, still tend to work the same. There's also, I suppose, the benefit that we've given the compartments the ability to now hold gas. So vehicle compartments, so custom tanks or just inside sealed rooms and so on, that has its own temperature data, it has its own pressure data. So the temperature and pressure inside those compartments are defined by the actual temperature and pressure of the fluid and gas within the compartment. And so on. So you can see now we are starting to descend, and you can see there's kind of a transition here. We've kind of got the moon planet, and you can see that the area below is kind of coming into view on the surface there. And we're going to descend down, and we have already spawned some buildings there. And I believe some of these vehicles in the video are workshop creations or modified workshop creations, or some of them we've made ourselves as well. And we're going to go and land near a lunar base, which I believe is a modified underwater base. It works quite well. And we'll land near that. We're going to explore the base. We're going to grab a buggy, and then we're going to go on an expedition into a cave on the moon. I imagine there are no caves on the moon, or no ones like you're about to see, but it's a bit of a creative authorship to make the landscape of the moon a little bit more interesting. So there's some quite cool cave systems that we have been adding in. Back to the patch notes. There are some long asked for features like large solar panels. We're adding some 4x4 units. So you've got obviously solar power is going to be very, very useful in space and on the moon. So yeah, we want to make that easier for players. So now you've only got 1/16 of the linking up of electric nodes to do. So that'll be a bit easier. Make it a lot easier to make solar arrays. And let's see, we've already discussed quite a lot of the fluid and gas stuff. Um, and oh yes, so I think there's more mechanics, and we've been working a lot on this gas system rework that we're doing. And as I said before, this will be included in the base game as well. So with the gases system, fires will now consume oxygen and they'll produce CO2. So if you have a fire inside a vehicle, that is going to use up your oxygen, that is going to produce CO2, that is going to make it a toxic environment to be in. And of course, with the space update and just generally, we're going to introduce hypoxia and the other one where there's too much CO2 and there's not enough oxygen. So they're going to be new damage types. You've also got overpressure and underpressure. So in terms of your creating your space living compartments, in terms of your life support, you want to be managing the pressures inside the compartments and the temperature, but also the gas levels as well in terms of if there's too much CO2 or not enough oxygen. And of course, there's other components like barometers and so on to help with that. There's also with the gases being able to be pressurized inside a compartment, and there potentially being a large kind of delta pressure between inside a compartment and the outside, such as if we opened this space shuttle's door, for example. We're not going to in this video because we actually have a pressure venting system to equalize pressure before we open the door to exit this craft. But if we did just open it or we release the door, then there is a force that's applied. You get kind of sucked out of or through a door if there's a delta pressure. And that, of course, happens not just in space, but in submarines and so on as well. There's also a new seat coming. It's the kind of the space backpack seat. It's kind of like you might have on a spacewalk. They've got those. I can't remember the name of them. Those backpacks that the astronauts wear. And that's got it's like it's a regular seat, except of course that it's quite compact, and you kind of sit in it in a standing position with your arms rested on the controls. And the idea there is that you can make a spacewalking kit. But I imagine there's quite a lot of other uses players are going to come up with that. You can see we're using the RTS system here just to find control this rocket into position. We're just trying to land it as near to the station as possible. Probably too near to be safe, but we've managed to control it. We've also obviously got the gravity system here, so I think on space, I think it's more or less the gravity you get on the moon in real life. I think it's 0.6 or something, 0.6 Gs, so 60% gravity. And of course, as you lift up from the moon, gravity reduces, and of course, as you descend to Earth, gravity increases. But of course, it's all relative. Of course, it's the effect of gravity that's changing. But if you want to go into a geostationary orbit, you can. There is like an altitude. I think it's around 300 kilometers where your the effect of gravity is neutralized by the centrifugal effect of the of orbiting the Earth at a geostationary speed. And then, of course, you've got the characters do have a little bit of steering as well, and this is a DLC feature. Only really works in space, but you've obviously got a little bit of steering in the air. Obviously, that's not entirely accurate for space, but it's just making the game more comfortable and easier to play. So players aren't necessarily floating off into nothingness of space constantly. Let's see what else we've got on this list. We've got some more minor things, but I'll just mention them as we go through. We've revised the sunrise and sunset sliders. They're now separated into day length and night length, and that was a mechanical change because we've changed how the sun and night system works internally in the engine. It's not obvious as a player, but that's been reworked in order to allow the DLC to work in terms of the transitions into space and so on. We've also improved our jet and rocket particle rendering. You'll certainly notice that the liquid fuel jets do not produce a trail. I'm not 100% sure we finalised our jet engine particle trail changes there, but we might be making changes to the jet engines too, because that's obviously a very popular and frequent request, and we do like to help players with those requests where we can see. Um, and we've also got um, new rocket workbenches. So these are workbenches on Earth, and they're different shapes. So you're familiar with the different workbenches you currently get in Stormworks. There's just some preset sizes. We've added a new preset size, which is a big tall one, and they're found on the landing pads. So it's the new Space Center in the Sawyer Isles, and then if you have the Arid DLC, there's the existing Space Center in the Arid DLC, which also has this workbench on the launch pad itself. Um, so yeah, you can see there was some particles that are emitted that just kind of graphically show like fluid transitioning and pressure equalizing. And actually, if you look, there's kind of some force that gets applied as we get pushed around a little bit here. As the particles are open and the pressure equalizes, you get pushed around a bit, and that there's not a lot of delta pressure, but there's still some air to move around as these doors open. So another big change we've been making is the vehicle groups. We recently mentioned this in a announcement. When a vehicle spawns, this is kind of an internal engine change, but it's very important for space. Previously, it did cause some issues for players, although it wasn't a very frequent problem. But if you spawn a vehicle and it's got different parts that you see here, I'm going to get ejected through that, and we've made a big mistake here. We've accidentally left the door open, and it's ejected all the gas, and we've left all the doors open, so all the air is escaping. But beginner's going to run through there now, and he's going to close the door for us so we can get back to the because I can't walk there. I'm trying to walk in that direction, but I'm getting pushed back. Um, yeah, we've got the vehicle groups, and this just allows us to treat two parts of a vehicle that aren't related to each other as separate vehicles. And this is super useful for, if you're ejecting your solid rocket boosters over the Earth and then traveling all the way over to the moon. It basically didn't work. It caused some other problems as well, just in the base game. So that will be an improvement for everyone, but it's most noticeable with the problems that solved in space. But it's just generally, I quite like that change. It does mean that the weapons DLC explosions do now correctly like destroy missiles in the way you kind of expect them to get despawned as they detonate and so on. So for me, that's quite a nice improvement. We've also changed the actual way that the game tiles work in the world. You now wrap and tile around. So when you reach the edge of the world, you actually wrap and tile back to the other side of the world, so you can kind of carry on traveling in the same direction continuously and infinitely. And that happens on the Earth and also on the Moon. So the new Moon biome actually wraps around on all the edges. So as you travel, it'll tile seamlessly across, and you should hopefully not notice the transitions. But yeah, so you would obviously see on the map as you wrap around, you just get moved on the map to the other border. But the actual gameplay is, again, it's a seamless thing. We've also got some new communication parts. We've got directional communication, and this is obviously very useful for communicating between the Earth and the Moon and just large distances in space. We've got communication dishes, and these directional dish antennas have a focal direction and a focal point, so they're going to aim towards a specific position and transmit to that. And they've got quite a narrow field of vision, but you get that set up, and if you're aiming towards a dish, even if it's very far away, that's still going to work. So here we have got our rover set up, and this is like a remote control operated rover here. So we're going to start traveling through the night. And the directional communication has a huge range. So it's useful again on the surface, but the traveling through air is not as efficient. You've got less transmission distance if you're transmitting through air as opposed to transmitting through space. If you're transmitting directly up, then you only have to transmit through the air that's between you and the top of the atmosphere. Obviously, once you're in space, the range is a lot higher on all of the radio kit, but particularly the directional antennas. But it just means you can set up your antenna. You can aim it at the moon. You can aim it at your lunar base. You can aim it at another spacecraft, and you can also use the antennas to track positions of stuff. If something's emitting a signal, you can aim your antenna at it and track the signal strength and so on. We've also got I was talking about the gas and liquid stuff. I think we've already talked about some of the other components. We've got the barometer, we've got the relief valve, we've also got new meters. We're also adding some new tanks, some new pre-made tanks that are kind of compressed cylinder style ones. It's a cosmetic thing. All of the tanks can contain compressed fluids and gases. You've also got the oh yeah, you can see here this is a bug. I think we fixed this today, but it was in the pre-recorded video yesterday. It's just an issue with the flares, just as we're changing some of the rendering stuff and adding some new rendering stuff in the DLC. But that is of course going to be fixed. I think it already is fixed, but that bug will disappear off screen in a few seconds. And there's new solid propellant fuel as well. So as solid rocket boosters now spawn with solid fuel propellant, in a similar way to the way you kind of got fluid fuel storage, like you've got petrol storage and so on the workbenches, you now can store solid propellant as well, and they can be manufactured in similar ways to like the ingots, the metal ingots and so on. They can be refined with water and aluminium to produce solid rocket fuel. So if you're playing Korea, there's a new resource introduced there as well. I've also, of course, got lots of add-on lure, and there's a bit of stuff there that's been useful for us as well, for creating new missions related to space. And yeah, I've got some extra notes at the bottom there, but I'll go through those later. So yeah, we've got the new atmosphere and space in the space DLC. We've got the liquid fuel rockets, we've got electrolysis. There's obviously the new moon biome as well, that's obviously positioned actually on the moon with a continuous transition from Earth to moon through space and so on. We've got the new RCS thrusters, the gyroscopic actuators, the astronomy sensors, and of course the new space missions. So yeah, I think I've talked for quite a while there, but let's have a look at the chat and I'll take some questions. And I might also just click live on the store page now, and once I've done that, I can kindly ask players to consider wishlisting, but I need to make the page live first, so let me just see if I can do that. Awesome. I will drop the link to the store page in the chat if you would kindly wishlist. It does make a big difference with the Valve's algorithms and so on for their own marketing. Cool. Well, let's have a look at some chat and some questions. On the screen right now, let's see, where am I up to? So we're still traveling. It's night time. You'll see me get my night vision out every now and again, and we're just following this this canyon edge. And our plan is that we want to go over to the caves. Our moon rover is very slow, but that's actually quite sensible because, of course, yeah, if we turn the vehicle over, then we're going to be a bit stuck. We don't want to have to walk back, so we're just taking it easy and enjoying the lunar landscape. When we get over there, you'll see we've got a little bit of a setup and some preset structures over there to help us get down into the caves. And this is stuff we made ourselves for the video. It's had a little bit of fun. You can see from time to time I'm just using the night vision kit, but it's very obviously the shadows are very dark on the moon, as you would expect. There's no atmosphere to bounce the light back, so that's how you kind of get this kind of like this lunar look kind of thing, this moon look, is that the shadows are just very, very dark. There's no blue sky above to soften the lighting. Right, let's have a look. What have we got here? Will we be getting pressurized fluids in the update next week? The pressurized fluids are coming at the same time as this DLC. So the benefit for there is that we're only changing the game once. And a lot of these changes are quite deep in. So it's not a long time to wait. I think we said, well, I don't want to start saying that again if it's wrong, but it's the 12th of October. So it's 6, 7, 8 weeks away, somewhere around there. Wow, this someone is spamming, will weapons work in space? Yes, of course, weapons will work in space. The ramifications of weaponizing space, well, let's not get too into that, but yes, you can weaponize space if you so wish. And yes, I mean, I think the nice thing about space in Stormworks is that you're taking all of the stuff that's already in Stormworks into space. I think when we were planning this update, I think we were mindful of, do we want to do space in Stormworks? I think ultimately we kind of decided yes, because while there's other space games out there and a lot of them are very, very good, if your favorite style of building is the Stormworks style of building, then the space vehicles are very, very good. And there's this kind of, I guess, quite mechanical way of building in Stormworks that just means just solving these design problems in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get in every other space game. So there is a little bit of a unique take on space. But yeah, the nice thing is that all this other parts of Stormworks is cross-compatible, so all the existing systems that we've got, we don't have any train lines on the moon, but it's the other stuff, like obviously we've got all the compartment stuff, we've got the communication stuff, we've got the electrics, we've got the fuels and so on. It's all gonna work as you expect, and a lot of it is just derived as well, where you've got the regular engines need air, for example. We got to take your air with you because there's no air in space, and that's just already a mechanic in the game, is that it was already just pulling the air out the atmosphere. And when there's no air in the atmosphere, the engines aren't going to work the same unless you've plugged them into a compressed gas cylinder to power those engines. But yeah, you're going to be more reliable on electric power, but that's all in there already. So it's very, very familiar set of mechanics, and you've got all your first person equipment and all your other components. But yes, the weapons DLC and the space DLC will be compatible. Jesus. Okay, we're gonna try and I'll just ask someone for some help with gathering the questions, so that everyone doesn't feel like they just have to spam. So with NPCs, this chat, Jesus, I can barely read it. I can't read it. With the NPCs, they're affected by they consume NPCs and animals consume oxygen now. They produce CO2. So if you've got NPCs in a sealed compartment, they will use up that oxygen, they'll use up the CO2. And likewise, if there is none because they're in a vacuum, then they're going to take pressure damage. They're going to obviously suffocate, and then they'll take damage and die that way. So there's that level of mechanic is in there, and of course there's more people in a spacecraft, the quicker the oxygen and CO2 will get used up. I think we've set it up as about 5 times the rate of real life, and that's I think to reflect that it's a lot easier to get to the moon. We've reduced the distance dramatically, and so on. Right, let's see if I can. Just scrolling. Yeah, scrolling kind of works. Kind of helps me read it. Uh, Jesus. How am I going to read this? Uh, I think people have asked about square pyramids. I think yeah, we're expecting this to be asked. I think I'm sure there's a lot of players that are going to have a lot of great feature requests and just questions about their feature of choice. Square Pyramid's is a great one. It's been asked for a long time. It is a popular request, and that obviously does put it in standing to be considered. Um, it's obviously a bit of a meme request at the moment. Like it's a sudden level of popularity, despite nothing has changed. You know, it's always been a request, but suddenly the rate of requests has gone up massively. I think driven by memes, which while we enjoy seeing that stuff and we enjoy the community and the interest around the game, that doesn't affect development decisions. We've obviously got to be fair to players and consider um, the actual unique player needs that we're trying to meet, and we just want to make all players happy. But it's definitely something we make sure we don't do is just listen to whoever screams the loudest. We make sure that we're measuring people's feedback and so on. There's also sales, which is another frequent request. We did look at it. You know, we kind of even started working on that, and it kind of got paused. So it's not that it's never going to happen for sales, but uh, at the moment we did do some work on it because we want to add it because it's such a popular request. But it's difficult, and I think it's just because of how our hydrodynamics work. We're worried that we'll add sails and the mechanics. You know, it will be a terrible sailing game because the physics and the mechanics won't be balanced in the way that you would want for a sailing game. So at the moment, sails paused. Fishing is something we're very interested in. 454 did a great video that really broke it down. And I think we'll certainly give that a lot of credit because there's nothing we love more than when a player kind of takes responsibility for an idea and works through it and is really specific about exactly what they mean when they're making their request. It makes it really easy for us to imagine, can it be done, can it not be done? Because I think a lot of the time with the big feature requests, we're concerned about developing the feature and then it actually not being quite how the players imagined. And there being disappointment there because that's the last thing we want to do. So I think when players are really specific and clear about exactly what their level of expectation would be, that makes it super easy for us. So I think if you are fishing, you can thank 454 for making that a lot more likely. But yeah, that's something we're thinking about as well. Another very, very, very popular player request. Obviously, as we've said recently, just a big area of our focus is just the fixes and the improvements. We want the game to be as robust as possible. We want to get through the backlog and just make the game as solid as possible. As a player, it can be difficult to measure that stuff, but please do let me show you have made huge progress in the last year because we've just been a lot more focused on clearing up the bugs list and we have been watching the issue tracker and we have been seeing the issues number of issues go down steadily and the severity of issues go down as well to the point where There's certainly plenty to do, and there are some serious issues, but I think a lot of the stuff that we haven't done are less major than stuff that we've been working on in the past. Um, Someone asks, will there be asteroids? There is no plan for asteroids at the moment. Um, yeah, I mean, asteroids would be cool. We haven't added them yet. I don't think there will be asteroids now. Someone asks, will Stormwolves get a space helmet? Oh, I would love that. If you want to take Stormwolves to space, you're gonna have to keep him in the spacecraft and have some docking so that he can live in the compressed compartments because there is no dog spacesuit, I'm afraid. Um, is there a map/orbital view to see where you are currently on a trajectory to? So there is not. I imagine someone will make something on the workshop. So I think I'll just quickly cover the limitations of the space DLC. I'll put these in the announcement in a bit more detail because it's obviously very important, I guess, to let players know exactly what they are and aren't getting in the update in the DLC. So there are some limitations. I would say the main one is our approach to the our approach to 3D space. I've discussed the gravity simulation and so on. When you go into space, you are traveling through 3D space, but as many players know, and actually as some people have very rightly pointed out in the community, they've said no, space DLC can't happen because the Stormworks world is flat and you'd need it to be spherical. As I've already discussed, the Stormworks world now tiles, so it's kind of spherical in the terms that you can wrap around, but it's not entirely spherical. You know, it's still a square. It's still square. It's still rectangular. It's not a sphere. And as you travel up from that world, you end up leaving the globe behind, but then you descend back down onto Earth, and you're going to descend onto that square tile. And it's likewise for the moon as you ascend from the moon. Obviously, 900 square kilometers is a big area, but the real moon is a lot bigger than that. You can see I'll just take us quickly to the video here. I'm having a great time here. We made this crane system here. This actually, it's not a static creation. I don't think it's actually just counterbalanced, counterweighted there, and we're anchoring ourselves over, and yeah, this is the first time we actually used this, so the descent is going to be painfully slow, but we will get to the bottom eventually. But yeah, we're gonna now descend. You can see the cave system below a little bit. The cave system is pretty huge, and these cracks in the ground that give you a view into the spaces below. Yeah, let's see. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so the spherical stuff. So yeah, it's the space simulation does work, but you don't have a 6 degree of freedom character controller. So when you go into space, you can't. You can still obviously pivot around the up axis and look around and look up, but you can't, for example, tilt and hang upside down in first person controls. Obviously, it's the same as Stormworks, where if you're in a seat, then you've got the full 6 degrees of freedom as you move with the vehicle. When you get out of that seat, you're going to reorientate into the normal direction. And that's I think there's just a couple of things here which are just left over from not making this as a space game when originally, you know, this is added on later. We've defeated quite a lot of the technical limitations, but you can see there I'm dropping a chem light down into the cave, and it just falls forever. It's a long way down. So yeah, the 6 degrees of freedom stuff. In some ways, it's fine. You know, it helps you actually orientate yourself and navigate a little bit. It helps you kind of understand where you are and not get too turned around in space, which is quite easy to do. You know, because you are just a big load of black nothingness. But just up front, that there is no 6 degrees of freedom character controller there. In terms of the 3D space, the journey to the moon does make sense in kind of a quantum space kind of sense. I'll try and explain that a little bit more in the announcement. But when you're traveling, you can travel off into the infiniteness of space. You can go there. You can also obviously go to the moon. You can go back to the Earth, but you can't, for example, go around the backside of the moon. We've kind of reorientated the world um, into kind of like the direction of like the gravitational forces, and that's how our space simulation works. I think for the vast majority of players, you just wouldn't notice. It just kind of makes sense. But I think if you're obviously, we do have the astronomy sensor as well to display or to give you that kind of information. So in terms of making a display to display your astronomy positioning, that should be reasonably straightforward to do. The astronomy sensor just gives you your three coordinates, your kind of your X, Y, and Z coordinates. It's not like a GPS coordinate. It's anchored to the Earth and the Moon, and it tells you if you're on the Earth or if you're on the Moon, or where you are in between in 3 dimensions. And will submarines behave similarly also with compartments? Yes. Submarines will behave in a similar way, I guess, to before, in terms of you've got your, your sealed volumes. You're able to go under the water. You obviously will now have pressure within your submarines. Some of the new compressed gases stuff is going to be a big improvement there. We haven't. I mean, we've done so much work on this compressed gases stuff. It is quite a big rework, but we've just really been quite lucky that we can do a lot of it and it not really affect a lot of creations. I suppose the fact that you couldn't put gases inside sealed compartments before meant that us adding that isn't weird. It means it doesn't really conflict too much. But yeah, you can potentially blow your ballast by releasing compressed gases into a compartment with liquid in, for example. And if you're you can have moon pools as well. Obviously, your moon pool is going to be highly pressurized as it goes down, and that stuff kind of works as you'd expect. The air will compress, the pressure will equalize through any compartment door and so on. Yeah, that's if anything makes the mechanics for submarines better and more realistic. You said something about getting oxygen through electricity. Will this work on subs to extract oxygen from water? So the answer is yes. You can use electrolysis to separate water into oxygen and hydrogen. The way that works is similar to a real electrolysis setup, i.e. you're putting water in and you've got 2 taps coming out, and it does separate the oxygen from the hydrogen as well, so it's not just a mix. So you can then discard the hydrogen and just keep the oxygen, use that to repopulate the air inside your submarine as well. Will there be liquid gas driven propellers? I think this is coming down to the turbo slash turbocharger slash what's the other word? There's 2 things that are really similar but distinctly mechanically different, aren't there? There's the turbocharger and the other impeller style thing. The liquid gas driven impellers, I think probably not. The problem is that there's a kind of a fundamental a problem for us converting the energy of compressed gas from one state to another state. It's not impossible that could happen in the future, but that's not going to happen with this update. But yeah, I think we remain open to loads of ideas. And yeah, I would just highlight we are working on next year's major update, first major update already. We're well into that, but there's going to be more stuff for next year that we haven't started working on yet. So we'll always look into the community to drive those decisions. And I think certainly there's been the great posts. Recently, we saw the post on Reddit with the all the theories about what this DLC was going to be, and there was the example of the old poll, and it's poll going back to 2020. And I think there was polls before there, and the interesting thing is that we have done the majority of stuff on that poll. When we put that poll up, we really never, it was 2020. We didn't really think we'd do it all. We thought we'd just do the first few bits and see where it took, and the list would change. But actually, it's remained fairly true, and we've actually set out in 2020 of these things we might like to do, and we didn't think we'd actually do them all, but we've certainly done the majority of them, which is quite interesting. So yeah, we're continuing our plans forward, but I mean, I think a general strategy has been for us to just focus a little bit more on quality and bugs, and a little bit less on adding new features. But then we are still adding new features. This is a great example of where we've added a load of new mechanics, and yeah, we're very excited to be doing so. So yes, liquid gas-driven propellers could happen. It's on the suggested features, but we haven't scheduled or planned to do that yet, as is a common answer from me. What's the new communications? Could we make satellites that send TV or radio signals? So exactly right. The new communication dishes, obviously you've got the existing antennas, which are kind of omnidirectional. They just transmit in all directions. With the satellite dishes, they're a directional antenna, so they're strong in only a very narrow field of view. And yes, you can have satellite dishes talk to satellite dishes. You can have satellite dishes talk to antennas, and you can have everything in between. So presumably you can have set up your satellite dish, aim it at your satellite. Your satellite doesn't have to have a satellite dish. It can have it aimed at the Earth, or it can just have a non-directional antenna. You kind of get a bonus dist range from using two directional antennas, or you can just use one, and you still get a huge amount of range there. So you can just aim your satellite dish at a satellite, and yeah, you can communicate straight up. If you're on the Earth, then there's a little bit of resistance going through the air, but it's not too much, and it's the distance going through the air isn't that far. So what you find is that yes, you can basically set up your satellite communication systems, and you can even put your satellites in geostationary orbit as well, so you can get the geostationary positioning and aim your antenna directly at a geostationary position, and then have a constant signal. Otherwise, if you've got like a lower orbit, then your satellites, in order to maintain altitude, has to travel horizontally to kind of benefit from the centrifugal effect, in order to give it some extra lift to keep its altitude even at higher altitudes of orbit. If that's the case, then you'll have to obviously track it with your antenna, or otherwise have your satellite tracking the ground position. It's up to you, but yeah, you got some cool mechanics to do there, and yeah, you got the satellite communication there. You can bounce signals to the moon, or you can just transmit directly to the moon as well. Can we please get flexible autocannon belts? A very, very common request, happened for a long time. There's a few reasons we don't really want to get too into that. I think one is that it's quite physics driven, and we don't really want to be adding like lots of like a belt of like chained physics bodies, because it's going to be a performance impact there, and mechanically it doesn't fully make sense as well. Like, is it going to clip through walls and so on? It's something we'll continue to consider, but it might just be beyond the scope of what we were trying to do there, I think. Been a very, very long ride down on this crane descent, but we are almost there. We are getting there. Probably 3/4 of the way down now. Do meteors work in space still? I don't think so, / I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know, because I'm not sure. Probably not. Let's leave it there. If they do, that would be a nice surprise, but I don't think they do. Are there enemy AI in space? No, there isn't. There is no enemy AI in space. we've not got plans to do one. That would be, yeah, I mean, oh, that would be cool. I'm yeah, I mean, I do like that idea. There's the Apple TV Originals TV show, isn't there? I forgot what it's called. I watched an episode last night. It's great, where there's kind of like the weaponization of space, and there's the military action on the moon. It's awesome. I'd love a bit of that. But yeah, I mean, um, we got loads of stuff on the task board that we'd like to do, but when that's not going to be in for the release. But that said, fundamentally, it's reasonably straightforward for someone to do it and put it on the workshop or design their own or whatever. I don't think that's going to be part of our DLC though. Can you put satellites or a space station in orbit? So that's definitely a yes. You can yeah, you can just put your satellite or your space station or components of a space station or parts of a satellite. You can stick them on your rocket. You can push them into space just like in real life. Once they're at the desired location, you can position them. You can position them at the right altitude, at the right location. Then, of course, you can get them into a geostationary position, and then yeah, you can then take up more parts and assemble them. You've got all the existing connectors, you've got the docking doors, you've got the turret rings, you've got all this cool stuff that's going to be really useful for making space stations and satellites and stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, that's something I'm really excited to see. I think the workshop creations there are just going to be crazy cool. And yeah, of course, we've made the bigger the 4x4 solar panels too, so that'll make it a bit easier to do those parts. I imagine you've kind of got some maximum payload that you can move in one go, so you'll probably have to assemble a little bit in orbit in space, but for me that just makes it better. That's I can't wait to see what players make. There is also some lure support for spawning stuff in space as well, so you can make your add-ons that spawn vehicles in space as well, and that's something we've been looking at doing because we obviously want to do our space missions that we're still working on. Can you travel to the sun? That's a no. You can't travel to the sun. It's too far away. And no, you can't. You can just travel into space. You can travel into the nothingness of space, but there's only two places you can go. One is Earth and one is the moon, or the nothingness of space, but there's nothing there. Will there be infrared cameras? FLIR cameras still planned? I not planning on it at the moment. I think that might be a stretch too far. I think that might be something we plan for the next game. Yeah, I don't think we're planning on doing infrared cameras at the moment. It was on the poll from years and years ago. I do like the idea, but is it useful enough? Is it core enough to the game for us to do it at this point? I don't know. It's probably going to take quite a lot of time. We could probably use that time better. It's probably going to be quite difficult to do in Stormworks, so probably not. But everything's a possibility, and as we get more stuff done, it does open up resources to schedule stuff like that. So I don't know, but not immediately. How many and what creator named locations have you made? So yeah, you'll see on the map there are quite a few, and yeah, obviously we do enjoy recognizing the workshop creators. It's something that I get a huge amount of joy from. Is checking out the workshop and seeing all the incredible creations that the player creations are just incredibly good. The skill of design and the time invested is really impressive, and we do like to recognize players where we can. It's a shame we can't recognize them all. There is a huge number of players, so we have been trying to focus on players with the I think the most subscribers or most subscribers within a certain amount of time. And obviously this is something we've named the locations a while ago as well, so it's not necessarily as of today, but we did produce a list. Obviously there's some incredible player creations in the trailer that we showed earlier. There's And yeah, we're keen to just recognise as many players as we can. So we have recognised quite a lot. There's some craters, there's some canyons, there's some caves, and there's lots of new locations to name after players. So yeah, there will be a new round, as we have previously done with the Arid DLC as well. There's a lot of players being name dropped on locations and stuff. Um, let's have a look. Will planes efficiently affected with high altitudes? So yes, this is actually something that happens. The aerodynamics does change as you go higher. The air gets thinner, and so effectively the forces, the drag, but also the lift is changed. It is reduced as you go higher with higher altitude. Um, so yeah, that is something that happens. The air does thin out, and it does affect the aerodynamics. Can we mine on the moon space? We haven't placed any resources on the moon at the moment, so there's no resources to mine on the moon. Um, uh, should you be able to mine helium-3? I don't know. It would be cool. I think we'd need a new resource, wouldn't it? You kind of want a new resource that you can't get on Earth, and then what would we want to do? We'd also, I don't know, I guess we could just put uranium on the moon. You could refine uranium on the moon and use it as a power source, perhaps. I don't know. We haven't really put too much thought into that. Um, that's probably not going to be part of the release, I would say. I don't think you are going to have any mineable resources on the moon. Player asks, is the support for subfault of a vehicle saving planned? So this is such a popular one. I think it is feasible. I'd like to see it happen at some point. We don't have it planned or scheduled. We certainly don't have a date for it. So we'll see if and when that happens. It's not currently planned. I know it's my answer for a lot of this stuff. It's just the truth. We do plan quite a bit of stuff. We've planned the next kind of 4 months of work or so. There's obviously slots for new bugs to go in. If we've created new bugs, then they can get scheduled earlier. But typically, we're planning ahead by about 4 months now. We know what's happening in the next 4 months. And beyond that, we don't know what's happened because we haven't decided yet. It's that simple. Player asks price and when is the release date. So the release date is October the 12th, and the price is the same as the other DLCs, $10. Will lasers be able to measure distances from the Earth to the moon? I think there's a maximum distance on lasers, and I think it is. It used to be 2 kilometers. Did we change it? I think we might have upped it, but I'm not sure. But no, basically, there is a maximum distance on laser distance measuring, and it's a lot less than the distance from the Earth to the moon. So no, you won't be able to use those, but you will want to use lasers for distance detection and so on, because obviously you don't have GPS systems and a bunch of other sensors that work on the Earth. I don't think altimeters work on the moon, for example. Obviously, that's like an air pressure thing. A lot of the stuff that you would normally work on the Earth that you might just assume is going to work. Actually, when you think about it, it doesn't. Someone's just told me it's 4 kilometers at the moment for lasers. So yeah, it's your maximum distance for lasers 4 kilometers. So yeah, you'll want to use lasers for measuring your distance to the ground and so on. And you have to be a bit creative with your navigation stuff. But as I said, we are introducing the new astronomy sensor, which will be fundamentally very useful for figuring out what your position is in space and on the moon as well. Let's have a look. How does the moon map work with the normal map? So there's a new tab. On the existing map, you've got like the regular map, and then you've got all the weather layers. You've now got a new tab for the moon. You click on that, and it just shows you the moon map with the stuff on it, and it works just like the regular map, except it's just showing the stuff on the moon. But otherwise, yeah, it just works exactly the same. What fuel do RCS thrusters use, and will they work on Earth? RCS thrusters work with any type of gas, so any type of pressurized gas. You can just pressurize air. It's that simple, and then they'll just use that. So you just link them up. They've got a like a a fluid port on the back. You pipe them to your compressed gas container, and then you just release the compressed gas through the thruster using the thruster logic, and that's going to fire that compressed gas off. They will work on Earth, yes, but they're not particularly effective because they are only producing a very small amount of thrust. Um, so they're not particularly useful on Earth, and they do require the space DLC to work. But they're only really useful in space, I would say. I don't really see the Earth applications being that useful, but players have proven me wrong many, many times. We're always seeing components that we never imagined could be used in a specific way being used in that way. Yeah, we will see what else they get used for. Whether they're just used as cosmetic parts, I don't know. But yeah, they do still produce a small amount of thrust on Earth as well. What kind of content can we expect to see on the moon, like mission types, resources, and such? I think with the mission types, I would expect the normal mission types. I think the only thing I would say here is that they are a bit more exciting, basically difficult. But it's rescue people, it's transport stuff, and that kind of thing. You know, the existing mission types that you would normally get is basically retrieve something, deliver something, and repair something, and rescue people. However, when the mission is in orbit at a space station or on the moon, there's a lot more involved. You've got to get there. You've got to do the operation. You've got to actually do the navigation stuff, and then you've got to get back again. So it can be logistically quite difficult, and there's a lot that can obviously go wrong. Space travel is not straightforward, and it is extremely dangerous. So yeah, I think the missions potentially going to work better, but we're still working on them. So there might be more info in a future announcement on that kind of stuff. Um, can one player be on Earth while the other one is on the moon? So the answer is yes, but more than that, you can have like vehicles be on the moon and on the Earth at the same time as well. Like keep alive blocks are still going to work, and so on like that. So yes, and of course you can communicate with each other using directional antennas. You can be just playing on the Earth, and players can be playing on the moon, and it's in the same game, and so on. It's all the same simulation rules as normal Stormworks. It's all one continuous simulation as well. And one player asked, "Can you replay the trailer for those who joined late? Will it be on the YouTube?" I will. I'm just gonna finish this stream first. Once this stream is over, I will push the announcement live, and the announcement of course has the trailer in it, so you'll be able to watch it in the announcement as soon as this stream ends. Of course, we will put this stream on repeat. I am recording it, so if you are watching this and it isn't now, then it'll say pre-recorded in the bottom left, and of course you'll be able to watch the stream there as well. And yeah, we'll post the announcement very soon after this stream, and when we do that, that will include the trailer. How big is the rocket workbench? Can we build giant rockets like Saturn V and Starship? It is big. Now, is it quite big enough? You might need to assemble your vehicle in multiple pieces. I know workbench modding is popular. It's not a part of the stock game, and that's to do with file sizes. It just gets a bit of an issue for the game engine when the file sizes get too big that we can't guarantee it works. So in that sense, we do avoid making the workbenches too big, but it is pretty tall. Is it the same length as like the large ship workbench but on its end? It might be bigger than that. I don't actually have that info in front of me. It is pretty big, but I think you might want to spawn your rockets in multiple pieces and assemble them, and the like, for really big stuff if you want to make a really, really big rocket. Of course, in Stormworks, there's amazing player creations already that are space based. Even though the game doesn't support space, you've got the barge ships with the rocket reclaiming and so on. Like that stuff's all going to be possible in the game. It's obviously not going to be easy, but it is rocket science after all. And players have already done it. There's already players who have. I think there's a few players who are into that stuff. I can think of one in particular, um, who done the SpaceX recreations. And honestly, I just find it incredible because the physics is the same as real life. So the fact that it works is amazing. There's some real maths involved. Um, it's pretty cool. Um, yeah, you can reuse rocket pieces potentially if you so wish. If you want to go to that level of detail, you'll obviously need a lot of vehicles in order to.
Did we lose his audio? I don't know. I don't know if we lost his audio or not. That's interesting. Seemed to cut out. If anyone else has it on and hears his audio still go, let me know and I'll check it and change it. But definitely seems interesting. Looks like the poll got 196 votes so far, 74% are buying and or planning on buying, and 26% are no. So it seems pretty popular. Definitely seems like it was one of the popular asks people have been having. So I think they've kind of gone. You hear it? Okay, let me refresh it, see if I can get it to come back up. So stand by. I'm going to just try to refresh his audio. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, guys. The his audio just cut out. So let me see if I can't get it back up. You guys said you're getting it. Is he ending it? Okay. All right, yeah, it just cut out, so I wonder what happened there, but it sounds like it cut out, which is interesting. I just tried grabbing a new link of it and it's still not working, so I'm not sure why their audio is cut out. So, anyways, I'll start talking about it. So, it definitely looks like this has been a popular feature people have been requesting. I know not everybody wants this, but again, that's not how it works. You kind of got to build something for a certain group of people, and other people aren't going to be interested in it. But definitely been seeing a lot of chattering people wanting space. Wasn't my top choice, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. They're adding pressurization mechanics in here too, so I think we're getting a good bit of stuff to come alongside it, which will be fun. You know, talking about he said that atmosphere is going to be thinner up at altitude, so that's going to be a good change for airplanes. It's going to make things like jets probably more effective. You're going to have to make some changes there. Compression for jets. You're going to probably have to supercharge your engines to get enough airflow into them. You're going to lose your, you're going to lose some of your efficiency of your engine as you gain altitude, as you would in real life. So that's going to be kind of cool. Even if you don't get the DLC, the pressurization update will come for everybody, which will be kind of nice. So should be a bunch of stuff there for submarines, things like underwater bases and having pressurized gases. So that'll be cool. electrolysis, so we'll be able to make hydrogen and oxygen with water. So that's pretty interesting. I think that's a cool get. So the DLC again is going to be October 12th, and it's $10. Every DLC has come out in October, so that really wasn't a surprise. Last DLC, the Industrial Frontier, was on sale when it came out. No idea if they're going to do that or not, but it was like $7.99, $8 or something. The last time they put on like 20% discount, and it looks like this one will be $10 when it comes out, which I think is reasonable. You know, $10 every year is not onerous compared to a lot of other games. So if anyone has the chat on, can still hear the audio. Is he done? Because I'm getting no audio on there. So yeah, I've got no audio on his. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Yeah, that'd be cool. So Stalemate's asking if hydrogen will be used for anything else. That would be cool if hydrogen could be used for other things. I could see having a hydrogen furnace or something to that extent would be really cool. You know, I don't know if he said anything about hydrogen, but we'll see when that comes out. You know, I think one of the best ways to get the game to kind of go in the direction you want is to use the official bug tracker. If you want more use with hydrogen, I would say request that. You know, it would be kind of cool to do fuel cells. That would be something to come out. And I think if we were, for example, put up a feature request for fuel cells, we could use hydrogen for that, and that would be a really cool way to do things. So from what he said, there's going to be solid rocket boosters. There's going to be liquid fueled boosters or liquid fuel engines. And so likely you're going to have segmental tank systems. You're probably going to have to plumb the pumping for the rockets. He did multi-stage rockets, which would make sense with hard points. Do plumbing for your multi-stage. For example, if you ever played Kerbal, they call it asparagus staging, where you want to draw your fuel from essentially from your external tanks into your central tank, so that you can drop your boosters as fast as possible for efficiency. Try to get that mass down. So that would be kind of cool. The engineering elements of this, I think, are really cool. They could have gone some kind of, they could have done a bunch of stuff that I think would have been, I'm trying to choose the right word, a little bit less involved. I think they did a good level of involvement here. For example, I would have never thought they would actually make it so it's a physicalized space between the Earth and the Moon there, and they did. He talked about how you'll be able to have a person on the Earth and on the Moon at the same time, which is really cool. I think that's a neat feature. To do that where a lot of games have done it with loading screen, where as you exit the atmosphere, it does a loading screen, then it's essentially like you've loaded into a new map, and they're keeping it the same map, which is impressive. It would be nice if there are things to mine on the moon, or at least some, for example, mission, go up, get moon rocks, come back. Sounds like, they showed some space station stuff. Sounds like those are going to be some of the missions. There'll probably be some cool missions on the moon. It's going to be a lot of engineering, which I think, is where the game, shines above others. I'm just reading some of the chat here. Yep, hydrogen and locks. Yeah, they didn't say anything about doing like methyl locks. It wouldn't surprise me if they did something like diesel locks, which of course, because kerosene is diesel and kerosene are close together, so you could do jet fuel or you could do diesel. They're pretty close as it is anyway. So do something like a jet fuel and liquid oxygen, setup for that would make sense as well. But as I said, there'd be solid rockets. Curious if you're probably gonna, I would say, the solid rocket boosters, you're just gonna end up buying them, I would say. Yeah, it's interesting. I think there are some end game things that will be kind of cool with this. I think coming up with building bases on the moon. That's going to be, for example, like when I do career build series, kind of think of it like that. I go ahead and you build up the money and then you want to go buy an island and you build your own personal base on the island. I think the moon would kind of be like that. You finally get to the point where you have the cash, you're going to, build some rockets, fly up to the moon, put a base on the moon. A lot of it's, doing that and operating. I think if we had a mining element, I think that would be better. It would give you a reason to go up to the moon and stay up there for a while. And then once you've accumulated resources, come back. I think that's a missed opportunity. So, DLC is space. So there's a moon, there's Earth, and you'll be able to go up there. It looks like, they have like pictures of the space shuttle Atlantis with a space station that looks damaged. So that looks like that's a mission. You would have to fly up, go repair the space station, come back. So gonna be interesting. He didn't talk, if unless I missed it, about the major update. I thought they said they were going to talk some more about the major update. He did talk about fishing somewhat, not that they are doing it, but that, he appreciated 5-4, what was it, 454's write up on that. So, but I think there is quite a bit with this DLC that will come to the person who even doesn't buy the DLC. The pressurization, the airplane changes, I think those are going to be beneficial. So definitely, look at the poll. It looks like, about a 70-30 mix, a little bit in favor of the 70, which sounds about right. You know, the company needs to continually put out revenue devices in order to stay a profitable company, and then they don't need it to appeal to everybody. That's something that, you know, that I think some people don't understand is, they need it to appeal to some people. This is going to bring in new players who are interested in space, who may not have bought the game, and then they say, "Oh, I'm interested in space. Let's get this game." It's going to bring in new players to buy the base game, plus it's going to take, old players like me and get us to buy, the DLC. I think that's beneficial. So I think this is good. It's not necessarily my first choice, but I think it was a lot of people's first choice. I'm certainly happy they're getting the content they want. And it seems like from the poll itself here, it seems pretty positive for people wanting to buy it. So it definitely seems like a marketable product, which again helps us all. Even if you have no interest in the DLC, this brings revenue and continued support to the game. It will bring revenue to the next game, and it shows them that this is a genre that is supportable. And that's something I think some people don't understand with this is a very niche genre, very complex engineering games, and so you need people to be willing to put out some money for a DLC to keep this genre alive, to buy this game to keep this genre alive. It's a very niche genre. Somebody's comment, in my chat here was talking about how this got away from the core concept of search and rescue. This is already a very narrow game for people who need to know a little bit of engineering or learn a little bit of engineering. It can be very complex at times. And so that is already a small audience. People willing to spend hours and hours and hours to learn something, to then spend tens to hundreds of hours to build a craft to do something. So that's a very niche audience as it is. If you further reduce that audience by saying, okay, and it's only search and rescue, you now have a tiny, tiny little audience to buy your base game and not buy your DLCs, and then the company doesn't get any money, and the company has to move on to another project or go bust. And so they have to expand in order to keep this game alive. And I think that's something some people are not understanding is you have to expand the game. That's why we're getting different avenues. If there were no trains in the game, engineers of Stormworks, most of those players would not play at all. If there was not, weapons DLC, that would, there would be a ton of people who would never play this game. So they need to diversify and change the gameplay and add new features. It's why you don't see them. There are a bunch of comments in my chat of people saying, "Oh, just fix the bugs or do a bug DLC or something." That would bring in a new revenue, and the company needs new revenue to survive. Every company needs new revenue to survive. So, it's so that's kind of why they need to do this. It's not a charity, it's a business. They have to come out with new products. And as we can see by just my poll alone, this seems pretty popular. Every week in the Steam discussions, Black Hole, you'd see a lot of people say space, when space, when space. And a lot of people were against space, but you don't need everybody to be into the DLC. You just need enough that it becomes a profitable adventure and expand the game. And I think that's going to do it. So again, it's not my number one choice, but it's certainly I'm going to get it. It sounds like a lot of people are interested. I'm happy that it's this. And so hopefully they'll, it sounds like they were very receptive to 454's write up on fishing. I think that, I think you could kind of hear in Deltar's talk there how they're a little bit afraid of, you know, not getting enough player feedback to know how we want something implemented. He talked about that with fishing is they're kind of afraid of that. And so, it makes me want to, I was originally going to do a write up on the logistics because, my background's in logistics of going through Industrial Frontier and seeing how they could fix that up. So I might go ahead and do a video on that. I didn't do it because I was like, oh, they probably won't watch it. It seems like they are watching, they are interested in these types of things. So I might do a video on that. I'm just reading some chat here, guys. So what are you guys looking forward to with this? I think the pressure mechanics, the fluid mechanics, I think that's really something a lot of people have been asking for. So even if you have no interest in the space element of it, we're getting pressurization, we're getting things like the need for oxygen, it sounds like. So you'll be able to make the oxygen, use the oxygen, which means you can go down a submarine, you can have an underwater base, you can do a lot of those things. So I think that's really cool. Trains in the moon. Yeah. They still are updating every at least other week. They're coming out with bug fixes and updates. You know, they've already said before. It doesn't mean they're not going to change their mind that they didn't want to redo the tracks for trains. It would be nice if they could go back and work on them a little bit. They have been going back and working on some of the areas for the trains. They have said that they've gone back and fixed a collision here, a collision there. So the only way they're going to know where these collisions are is if you put it on the bug tracker. So go on the bug tracker. First thing, search. A lot of people don't search. Search for the feature you're looking for and put it on there. And then support somebody else's. If they have 28 divergent ones, they just put it in as a duplicate, which they kind of have to. And then you won't see that. So for example, here's the bug tracker. If we put in tracks and search it, go through here and you can see there's 1,000 different track ones. Like here's an FJ Warner one. Close duplicate, then go to the duplicate. And then if you're having this issue, star it. That's the best way you're going to be able to get these things done is to go and search for things. If you were the dev and you had to come in here and you're like, okay, have to read all these, it's tough. If you go in there, like here's one called train tracks. Okay. Closed, no response, issue closed. Okay, so if you were somebody who had issues with this, you got to come up here and click the star. That shows them that, that's an issue you're having as well. You can look at some of these popular ones and see all the different stars on them. I don't think I could sort by star, but for like, look at space, add space. Set duplicate. Click on the set duplicate. So here is where they want space stuff. So, if you're interested in space, go up here, click on the star. That's going to be the best way you get the stuff that's bothering you fixed. Ranting on Reddit, ranting on Steam does not help. This is where they want to see it. And that's going to be the best way to do it. And the more stars something has, the more likely they'll be able to go after that because they can justify it. Like right here, 18 stars. I don't even know what it is. Button and display only instrument panel type, which requires 1 voxel space. I would love this. That's awesome. Instead of, so you can put them next to each other. Bingo. Look at that. That's why it has that many stars. So I highly recommend people go on the bug tracker and enter in your bugs, do the search first, make it easier. The easier it is for them to read what you want, the more likely you're going to get it. So let me just read some of this chat here. Yeah, I think it's going to be neat to make some vehicles in space. Have some reduced gravity will be cool. I think it's going to be cool to have to bring vehicles up there. I didn't see a workbench. I assume there is one for that space station he built on the moon. So that would not surprise me if that's a one of those workbenches for building static buildings. I played a lot of space engineers. Let's look at my space engineers here. I've got a lot of space engineers. Oh, that's Tarkov. I clicked on Tarkov instead. I played a lot of space engineers. This is not that. It's I understand the comparison, but I kind of don't think the comparison is apt necessarily. You know, let's see. Space engineers is a lot different. It has some parallels, but I definitely where's space engineers? Where you at there, guy? I have quite a bit of space engineers time. The thing with space engineers is you put unless they've changed it recently, I haven't played in a while, but space engineers, you put a battery anywhere on the craft, it works. You don't have to make complex systems. You don't get to craft the way things look all that detailed because you have the different sizes. The large, I forget what they call this, large grid and small grid. So I have 644 hours of space engineers. I enjoyed space engineers, but I think Stormworks is so much better in the ability that part of what makes Stormworks complicated and hard for the quote unquote new player to get into is why it's such a great game. Why, if you look at what am I up to now? We're almost at 5,000 hours. So 4,950. Why do I have 4,950 hours in Stormworks? I can build a craft exactly how I want it. If I want that door to be on this side, I can put this door on this side. If I want that door to automatically close, if pressure gets out, I can do that. That's what gives Stormworks longevity. That is the best part about Stormworks. And so, I could never go back to playing Space Engineers. It would not interest me in the least. And it was, there are some cool things with Space Engineers, but I would pick Stormworks building system over that any day of the week. I'm just reading some chat. Yeah, I played a little Empyrean. Let's see. I have not played Empyrean in a while. How do you spell it? There it is, Empyrean with a Y. I've only got 18 hours on Empyrean. I love the Stormworks building, the way you build in Stormworks. I think that's great. That is what I think really sets this game apart, the ability to configure things any way you want. And so that's what's fantastic with Stormworks. And so adding a new type of feature like space, makes it so that we can take that familiar building system and go there. And I think it's just so much more configurable than it is with a game like Space Engineers. New DLC is space, as you can see by the trailer, which is on Steam if you're interested in watching that trailer. Yeah, I've never gotten to Lua much in Space Engineers. I thought it was an okay game. I very much want to be first person. I want to be in the build. I had issues with they started adding things like airlock doors. That was kind of cool. But I think the way we can program with microcontrollers here, the way we can do all that is just so much better. Will there be dead chunks happening in space? I don't know what do you mean by dead chunks. There, dog. Not sure what you mean there. But yeah, I'm digging this. Let's check out the Steam page. I think they added it here somewhere. Where is it? I put it on the wish list, so see if I have a wish list up. When they change Steam, I haven't screwed with it in a while, so it's kind of changed the UI. I hate it when they change. Here it is, right here. So this is the Steam page for it, so you can watch that video if you're interested. October 12th, 2023. Every DLC has been in October, so 2 weeks. October 12th is not in 2 weeks. October 12th is in 6 weeks. So, yep, October 12th. So it says this game plans to unlock in approximately 6 weeks, right there. So, yeah, October 12th. It's going to be around $10. I don't know if they'll put it on sale or not. I would find it highly unlikely because most games will tend to do their sales around Christmas time. They already discounted Industrial Frontier when it came out. So it's going to be, I would say likely it's going to be $10, and then you might get a 20% discount on it around Christmas time. But again, it's small money, $10. Can't get lunch for $10. And so it's, I think it's a reasonable price. There are people who accuse them of gouging. They're not gouging. One DLC a year, you know, and they add a lot of the functionality to the base game. They just add the extra DLC content as a pay thing. We got new stuff with Industrial Frontier like rail lines on the main island, and with this we're getting a pressurization update if you buy the DLC or you don't. And then for those who buy the DLC, we'll get everything for it. And guess what? If you don't want to buy the DLC, you don't have to buy it. It's the people complain about, don't buy it. And that shows that, okay, you didn't want this one. That's how they, voting with your wallet is one of the only ways you can influence a company is if you don't want it, don't buy it. And if they come out with one you want, buy that one. It's perfectly up to you guys. Yeah, I understand people have their own financial, issues and whatnot, but $10, you cannot get, even if you got 1 hour of entertainment out of it, how often do you get 1 hour of entertainment in life for $10? That's pretty rare, and I think the best thing to do is, hey, you play it for an hour and you don't like it. Did you get, one, you can return it to Steam. If you get 2 hours before you can return it on Steam. So if you play this game for 2 hours, the DLC for 2 hours, and you don't like it and you return it, you just got, you just paid $5 an hour for some entertainment, and you can still return it. If you get, if you play it more than that, it only costs you $10. So it's again, it's up to you guys if you want to buy it or not. But I think that's, I think it's more than reasonable. Citrus going to work on that landing craft page. You got some time. What is it? Midweek? It's due. It's midweek next week. It was going to be the weekend of the long holiday, but everybody decided to start their builds early, so I started the challenge early. So, yep, October 12th, $10. Let's see. They don't really have much else on the page, but I think it seems cool. We saw some cool stuff with the trailer. If we go back through some of the stuff, he answers some questions. There are going to be a workbench where you can build this. There'll be one on the Sawyer Islands, so that if you do not have Industrial Frontier, you'll still be able to buy this DLC and use that content. So if you have Industrial Frontier, you'll be able to launch at both Sawyer Islands and the Meyer Islands. I'm kind of blown away that they actually did a planet and moon and a transition. The space seems like physicalized space. It's not a loading screen. That surprised me. It looks like, parts-wise, it looked like he had new parts for landing legs. He may have built them. I'm not sure. I couldn't get a good view of them. There are, I'm trying to see if there's some new parts. Some of these parts definitely look, like we've had them. That just looks like blocks. Looks like some more blocks here. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Looks like some ram scoops there. So definitely we're getting some new parts, but a lot of these are old parts, which the nice thing with that is it's familiar. As you can see, this looks like one of the missions. It's a spatial Atlantis, and they had, if you look up here, you could see there's damage up top. This reminds me of the buoy missions. So if you ever played the buoy missions, it says go out and repair a buoy. Same type of thing, just with a different vehicle. Instead of taking a boat out, repairing a buoy, you're taking a spaceship out to repair a space station. So that seems pretty cool. And it's, the nice thing is it's familiar, but it is a new environment. So it's familiar gameplay with a new environment, which I think is one of the better ways to do it. As you can see at this part of the video, he gets blown out of the airlock because they left a bunch of the doors open. So, emergent gameplay could be pretty cool in this if you are bringing oxygen up with you, which is likely. If you think about in-game in Stormworks, water is pretty heavy, And so to bring a lot of water with you is probably going to be heavy. Now, I don't know if hydrogen is going to be light as it should be, but let's say the hydrogen is pretty light. It would make sense to do your electrolysis on Earth and then bring up the oxygen and the hydrogen in your tanks, bring some extra oxygen. That oxygen theoretically should weigh less than unless it's liquid oxygen, should weigh less than than bringing the water up and doing electrolysis up on the moon. And so you'd want to make sure there's a lot of planning here. You have to engineer your vehicle, you have to bring enough oxygen up, you have to, maybe you'll be able to spawn oxygen in the workbench, I'm not sure. But it'll be kind of cool to bring some oxygen up. I don't know how it's going to work with oxygen transfer. Are they putting CO2 in? Are we going to have to scrub CO2? So maybe we'll get some parts for scrubbing. Maybe put it through a filter and out comes, oxygen from the CO2. Who knows? That would be kind of cool to do. So that's interesting. Checking some of his chat. Yeah, gyrocopter to the moon. How would your gyrocopter work? The blades have nothing to bite. There's no atmosphere. Yeah, it looks like BD Gogsy is asking, if you're going to need a way to produce oxygen for submarines. He said yes, electrolysis. So you're going to be able to use electrolysis to break apart water into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen, you probably vent. They didn't talk about a hydrogen furnace. That would be awesome if they did a hydrogen furnace to be able to do hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen, steam would be kind of cool. Yeah, they said that you're going to have to equalize the pressure and you're going to have to purge. So that's interesting. Yeah, I don't think they're leaving the. Yeah, I talked about this before, BlazeBeat. The issue I have with this is, and I talked about it, a second ago earlier. I'll bring it up. So this is the issue and why I think they can't stick to, why they have to expand the scope of the game. You have some purists who don't want them to expand the scope of the game, and this would be my argument against that is, talk about Venn diagrams and whatnot here. Get into it. So let's say, okay, so this is the group of people who are willing to do an extremely challenging engineering game where you have to learn a lot of engineering concepts just to be able to build something as basic as a car or a boat. You hear it all the time. A new player comes in ultra frustrated that they can't just do like, I've never played Brick Rigs, but like a Brick Rigs type of game or Space Engineers type of game where you just stick a battery on car, stick wheel on car, now car work. That's not what Stormworks is. You have to actually engineer. So the group of people who enjoy an engineering game are this. All right. Now, the people who enjoy an engineering game and only want search and rescue or enjoy only search and rescue is now this. So this is, makes X number of dollars. This makes more dollars. So this wouldn't make enough money by itself. Now you have a group over here who are interested in space. So they're over here. All right, now they're all within this engineering group. You need to get enough of these bubbles in here to keep the game profitable, because if you had any one of the bubbles, the game would not be profitable enough. You talk about the train community. So you have a train community. You think about Engineers of Stormworks. If you didn't have the train bubble in there, maybe the whole bubble is not going to be profitable enough. And so, you get some of the people who are purists who, oh, it's not search and rescue, it's supposed to only be search and rescue. Well, you'd have this tiny, tiny green little bubble, and they would never be able to remain profitable with this. And so by being able to branch out and filling the main circle with all these other bubbles, you start to bring people in. And then you get, okay, well, we have some people, they want a space DLC. Okay, well, we bring out a space DLC, and we bring out a weapons DLC. They brought out the weapons DLC, and so now you have these more bubbles in there that will make you money. And that's how you keep a game alive. Just focusing on this one bubble, well, eventually you're going to get this bubble is going to reach saturation, and we're not going to have enough money to you know, that bubble can be completely full and it's not going to be enough to support the game. You need all of these bubbles to be able to do it. And the company needs to keep having new sources of revenue like all of these DLCs to be able to keep people coming back. You know, I'm looking at the view count on this video's high. I looked at Endo's stream was high. There were like 1,100 people in the dev stream. This is bringing people back to the game. Up. Sorry, guys. Okay, it's showing. It's just the delay is showing. I would make sure I was showing you my bubbles here. But that's the thing is, you know, and not every DLC has to be about you or something you're even interested in. You know, think of it this way: it's bringing other people in the game, which supports your desired playstyle. And so, for example, here's the search and rescue people right here. I play a lot of search and rescue. I find search and rescue enjoyable. You know, I probably play more search and rescue than I would say most. And so you have search and rescue right there. All right, so that's the search and rescue bubble. Well, guess what? The game would collapse if it was just a very complex engineering game about search and rescue. So when they came out with Weapons DLC, this group of people here who would have left the game, who would have never even bought the game if it wasn't for Weapons DLC, well, guess what? They're supporting the search and rescue community because they make the game profitable. And then there are a bunch of people who love space who may not even have heard of this game, but they're going to do a search on Steam today and they're going to see space. And they're going to buy this game. And I'm going to buy this DLC. And so those people are going to spend $24 in the game, they're going to spend $10 in the DLC, and I'm going to spend another $10 in the game. And this supports search and rescue. And this supports weapons, and weapons supports these. And so by bringing more people into the community, it is going to keep this game going and alive. And if you want them to fix something for you, you know, like, you know, Citrus saying I want them to fix multiplayer. Me too. But you need these bubbles full of revenue or else they cannot afford to keep it going. They can't afford to keep the lights on. There have been some positive things. If you listen to some of what Deltars was saying there, he talks about, you know, they have plans well into next year, you know, for more major updates. You know, that initially they were talking like maybe one. Now I think he's confirmed 2 major updates for next year, and I think they confirmed another one for this year. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what they said. And a lot of this has to do is if the game is still profitable, they can still continue with it. Eventually, if it becomes unprofitable, they have to move on to another product. And so, you know, if you want, one of the great ways to keep, you know, this game going is to bring more people in. And guess what? If you don't want to spend more money in the game, you don't have to. Because, for example, the Space DLC is going to bring in some new players who have never even touched this game before, and that's going to support the game that you're playing. And so even if you don't ever touch Space, their new revenue is going to help keep the game alive for you as well. So it's one of the reasons I don't poo-poo on anyone else's fun, because their fun is just as important as mine, and their fun actually does in some way support mine. So yeah, so 1,700 people on the dev stream, yeah. You know, and so that's the thing, is you have to look at this from their perspective. This is how they put food in their mouth. This is how they keep, you know, a roof over their head. And, you know, that's the most important thing to them. You know, if you have a, you know, I'd say most of you have some sort of job. You know, if you have a job, you know, you may care about the customer, but at the end of the day, the most important thing about you at your job when you go to your job every day is that it's going to put food on the table and it's going to keep a roof over your head. That's what's important at its basis for you. You know, so that's what's most important. So they need their number. You know, somebody said in one of the Steam chats, they said, "Oh, their primary focus should be bugs." Their primary focus is and always is going to be to have a profitable company. That's what their primary focus is always going to be, and it has to be. Because if they don't, then no bugs are getting fixed because the company closes down. You know, so they have to keep the company profitable, and then the next step is, you know, keeping the game, you know, bug-free as it can be, reducing bugs. You know, I don't experience that many bugs myself, and I play 5,000 hours. There are bugs. Certainly, multiplayer can be problematic, you know, but we used to do the Workbench podcast. There would be six of us. We would have people in Europe, we'd have people on the West Coast of the U.S., East Coast of the U.S., Middle U.S., all in the same server, and we would have a little bit of lag, but you could put five or six of us in one airplane flying up to the Arctic, and we'd do it fine. Sometimes you'd have to have somebody sit in their seat, and they couldn't get out of their seat. They'd glitch out of the airplane because of desync. But that was not the game's fault necessarily. That was the fact that we had somebody in Europe being connected to somebody in the West Coast of the U.S. being hosting, and so you're talking, what's that, 8,000 miles? So you had the internet signal going 8,000 miles trying to keep somebody in their seat. I have the same problem in Escape from Tarkov with desync. And so it's to expect that to completely 100% go away, it won't. But I'm all for bug fixes. They do bug fixes every other week. We get a what do you call it? Patch notes every other week at least. They're doing it. The problem is when you have a bug, it's very personal to you. It's ruining your type of gameplay. That seems like the most important thing to you. But for example, somebody who doesn't play the same way you do may have never experienced that bug. So, and they have to balance that. They have to see what are the most pressing bugs, what are the game-breaking bugs, what are the annoying bugs. A game-breaking bug is going to take precedence over an annoying bug. So, they're going to continue to keep doing bug fixes. They've already said that, it will never, let's put it this way, bug fixes will never get done as fast as we would like. That's just the nature of the beast is, they're just never going to get done as fast as we would like, and they're going to introduce new bugs. That's the nature of the beast, but that's how you get innovation and movement forward. I was reading some chat. Yep, yeah, I could see, like I'm reading Stalemate's comment. Honestly, as much as I expect to be fishing, it would be basically a different flavor of Industrial Frontier. Yep, I think I thought it was going to be that for certain things they've said in the past. But this is kind of my thing with, personally, I would have loved fishing. I'm going to enjoy the space. Fishing would have been probably my first choice. The thing with it is this, though. Does fishing bring in new players? It could bring in some small number of new players. So say this was fishing. I would say fishing would be a smaller bubble. And the reason is this. A lot of the mechanics are in there already, so that makes it easy for them to add fishing. I think it would be very easy for them to add fishing. But I don't think it's going to bring in a new crowd. We already have a lot of boat builders. We have people who build fishing boats with no mechanic to use them. I think space is adding a new mechanic, and so to a certain extent, I think you need to add new mechanics. Let's look at some of these DLCs they've had, right? So we had Industrial Frontier, where is it? Weapons DLC. That came out with new mechanics. They have the ability for us to attack AI. They have the ability for us to attack each other. That's a new mechanic that was not in the game before. Then they came out with Industrial Frontier, adding mining. And I think oil was part of that, even though it came out as a major. It's still, very Industrial Frontier centric, I would say. And so that adds a new mechanic, bringing in, hopefully, new players. Space is going to bring in new players. I think fishing would bring in a small number of new players. I think it would please a lot of the current audience. But I think space has probably a better chance of bringing in new players. So, and again, remember, you bring in that new revenue, it supports all these other ones because it makes this big bubble sustainable. So, I personally would have preferred fishing, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun too. Yeah, you can always say that though. It took it away from here. It's like, oh, Dad took my sister out to the movies. He took away from me. No, he wasn't taking away from me. He was giving to my sister. So you think of it that way. Are they taking something from you when they are giving something to the space people? I don't think so. Again, it's, I would use that analogy, right? They took out, they gave me some attention, and then they're giving somebody else some attention. It's not a zero-sum game. They're not just taking from you. They're giving to somebody else. So they're giving to some space people. Even if I had no interest in the DLC, I'd be happy they did it because it's going to support the game and it's going to make those people happy who've been very much asking for that. And so I care about those other people too. I want them to enjoy the game as well. Yeah. We're just kind of going over the what the devs were talking about. I'm just reading some chat. We watched the video, the release video for the space DLC. Yeah, I think fishing is probably really fishing could be done with a major DLC, a major update. You know, we get a couple major updates a year. I think we're due one more, and then they've already talked about they're working on and they know what the next one is going to be already. So I think fishing would actually make for a pretty good major update. It seems like the majors are already servicing what we have in game. So for example, we got the oil major that serviced Industrial Frontier. We added some content to Industrial Frontier. We added some content to the Sawyer Islands by way of the offshore drilling situation, changing the mechanics of how you sell oil, oil cleanup. So that serviced it, Industrial Frontier. I think we already have a strong shipbuilding element in game. We have the really good water physics compared to other games, and the ability to build really cool ships and crane things onto the ship. So I would see fishing might be instead of a DLC, would probably be more suited to a major update. That would make sense to me, because what are they really adding? If we look back at kind of history, weapons DLC was a big change, added a lot of parts, but it also added the mechanic of the AI. Space is going to add a lot of parts, the mechanics of adding the moon and space travel. The majors, fishing, oil, adding that mechanic to already pre-existing parts of the game. I think fishing could be added to pre-existing parts of the game. Add fishing pots, add the interactability of the physicalized fish. I think that would be cool. No, they shouldn't change the name of the game. That's silly. The game is still a search and rescue game with weapons, with trains, with oil, with space. They don't need to change the name of the game. It's go look at any other business that has a name and they do other things, right? General Electric, right? General Electric started, doing electrical stuff. You go look at all the stuff GE does. GE is kind of not great right now, but General Electric started with mostly electrical stuff. But if you look at all the subsidiaries of it, we have GE Healthcare. The company is called General Electric, but they have healthcare. But they do healthcare, aerospace. They do digital goods and more. No company really does this. They have a brand. The brand is Stormworks. That is the brand. And underneath the brand expands. They don't need to change the name of the game. Go look at any of these other businesses. They don't drastically change the name of the game. For example, the Teamsters Union, which I'm a member of. The Teamsters are called Teamsters because they were the people who would run a team of horses, right? They didn't change them to the Trucksters. They kept them as the Teamsters because that was their name, and it has a legacy and it has a history, and you keep the name of the product. You don't just randomly change it. I don't understand that notion at all, really, frankly. It's not weird. It's not weird to call it Stormworks Build and Rescue. Guess what I did? Guess what I did yesterday in Stormworks Build and Rescue? I built and I rescued. They didn't take it away. Still there. I can still build and I can still rescue. Most of the missions are still building and rescuing, but you can do other stuff. They've added to the game. They didn't take that away. If they took out the ability to rescue people, yeah, you can make a point. Yeah, it shouldn't be called rescue anymore because you can't rescue anymore. It's still the main portion of the game. I don't understand that really at all. I really don't. And they've already bent the knee to people who have that mindset, because guess what? They're calling the next game not Stormworks, you know, because of that very reason, is because people try to keep them in that box by utilizing their name as a cudgel to say, oh, you should only do this thing. I just really don't get that thought process at all. I don't. And guess what you're going to do in space? You're going to build a spaceship and you're going to go up to that space station and you're going to rescue people. I'm just reading some chat here. It's more simplified, which I think is good. I think to further make people have to try to do orbital mechanics is kind of nuts. It seems like it's a straight shot to the moon, which theoretically you could take a straight shot to the moon if you had enough thrust. The only reason that we do orbital mechanics where we essentially coast is because it saves fuel. So it's a straight shot to the moon. It doesn't appear there's any loading screen because they said you'd have one person in a multiplayer session on the Earth and one person on the moon in the multiplayer session. So I think what will happen is the skybox changes for the Earth to obscure it as you go away. Same thing happened. You saw it as we were coming down and landing on the moon. It was very depixelated like most games, and as you get closer, you get more detail in there and then spawned in items. So and they've already talked, they're going to change the way that things kind of spawn in and out. So I would watch the trailer. I thought the trailer was pretty good. Yep, GE machine guns. Yeah, there's no loading screen. It looks like a straight shot, so it kind of looks like, they also the English language me speak. They also said that it's a wrapping now. So what they were saying was you'll be able to wrap around the on the mainland. So, for example, you have the Earth, you have the Moon. I don't know if they're actually round or discs, but they said you'd be able to wrap around on the main islands. So, my understanding is, like, say Sawyer's here, and you have the arid biome here, and you have the Arctic here. If you started heading towards the west, you would wrap around and come back on the east. So I don't know if they do that as an actual sphere or if they're doing that as essentially you're just coming along, teleport. So games have done it both ways. So I don't know how they're doing it. It wouldn't surprise me. Remember when they reduced the world size to 256 by 256? If they were doing that, they're going to wrap it. They could be just wrapping the world like that. But I don't know how the mechanic exactly is going to work for that. Yeah, it seems like they didn't show the actual workbenches, but we do have islands you can buy that have the static object workbenches where you can build a base. So it would not surprise me if there was a place on the moon that had these static objects, or you could use an add-on to make one, the add-on editor to make one. So yeah, the moon wraps around. I believe they said that as well. That's why I put this graphic up here is, same thing. Go west on the moon, come back east on the moon. Assuming that we polarize the moon. But but yeah, so that seems like a neat mechanic to add on there. He seemed open to, like, I don't know, he seemed like he didn't think that people would want minables on the moon. Again, go on the proper bug tracker, tell them what you want in there, you know, and ask it like, if you're asking somebody you would like to get something from, I bet you they're going to put a bunch of stuff in here for people are going to be asking for, hey, it would be really cool to, let me see if they have it on here. Let's search for moon. See if anyone has put anything on here yet already. That's just old moon stuff. But, I bet people are going to ask pretty soon for, hey, can you put some minables on the moon? For example, moon rocks. And, there's a small, take a small quantity of moon rocks, bring them back. I'm curious how we're going to go back and land on the planet. That interests me. Yeah, that makes sense. Just kind of go around. Yeah. But again, we'll see. And you don't know what players are going to want until they get there, you know. So once people, you don't know what you have until you get it. So you don't know what you're going to need. For example, like think back Industrial Frontier before we knew what Industrial Frontier had on it. You'd say, oh, I wanted this and this and this and this and this. Well, then you get the actual Industrial Frontier and you realize half your ideas wouldn't work because that's not how it was built. I have my own personal issues with how Industrial Frontier was made. And, I was heartened by the fact they watched 454's video about fishing and they saw some ideas there. it makes me, because I was originally going to do a video on my thoughts on Industrial Frontier, and I said, what's the likelihood they watch it? It seems like they are interested, and they told us what they want. They want to actually see examples of how it be, because, he said his fear, he didn't say his fear, but that's what it meant, was his concern or his fear about it was that they're not going to implement something the way people would like. And so that's my issue with Industrial Frontier. So by going back and doing a video and saying, hey, if you changed X, Y, and Z, and it's easy for you to change this by doing, A, B, and C, then you'll make this experience much better. And if they say, hey, we can sell more copies of Industrial Frontier, or we can make the people who already bought it happier by doing these things, and it's a small expenditure of time or a, marketable expenditure of time, then it can happen, so that makes sense. Yeah, the flat earthers are never happy. Nor they're missing a beat, those flat earthers, I think. So, but yeah, so I think it's gonna be a cool DLC. Is it necessarily the what I wanted? No, but it's, again, I think it's great. I think it has a lot of, um, I think there's a lot of interesting elements there, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think it's gonna give us a lot of engineering to do. You know, I don't play much weapons DLC, but I still am glad it was made. I enjoyed the time I've used it, and you don't need to play it all the time to make your time and make it worthwhile. As long as you get $10 worth of enjoyment out of it, I think it's a win. For you and for them. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't get is, you know, you just need to get enough entertainment out of the product to make the amount of money you spent for it worthwhile. That's it. I could go out and spend $10 on lunch, and I bet you I'm going to get less enjoyment out of it than this DLC. Spending $10 on lunch. I spent $10 on toilet paper. I got a lot less enjoyment out of that toilet paper than I did on the DLC. So, I think perspective helps a little bit. Yeah, yeah. So I'll have to make a video on Industrial Frontier. Um, kind of. We'll look at. We'll do a little Industrial Frontier commentary now here. But yeah, it definitely seems like, a lot of people are tuned in, a lot of interest. We can kind of see it. Those of us who are making videos, we can see pretty much real time. Like, you see when people come back. When a major update comes out, the view counts go up. People are back and interested in the game. It's pretty normal for people to step away from the game for a little while. There's not new content, so they play with the content they got. They kind of get to the point where they don't know what to do next, and they step away. And then when there's more new content, they step back. But I think this has a really a good chance of bringing a lot of new people in, and I think that's important. You know, kind of the purists who want the game uh, to only ever be, the search and rescue, like I showed on that little circle diagram. You can't sustain the game on that small of an audience. You need those other bubbles to be able to fill the big bubble. So, like, for example, my thoughts on Industrial Frontier, I've talked about this before, but I'll make a coherent video for the devs. But for example, like, I think it's a good update that has logistics problems. The devs are not logistics people. They don't know logistics. They know um, you know game development, from somebody who knows some stuff about logistics here, about what I got 20 years in logistics essentially. One of the things that let me down with Industrial Frontier is I love the mining. The mining is great. The issue is this. I have to drive some trucks up to here to mine. That's fine. That makes sense. Drive some mining trucks up here, mine, mine, mine. I have two ways to do this. I should be able to stick with trucks, or I should be able to offload them on a train and then complete the rest of the process and the journey. If I drive over here, let's say that takes me 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes probably sometimes to get all my vehicles up to the mine. I've done some videos on career build series. It takes me about 45 minutes to get all of my mining equipment up here, and then I plan to stay there until I fill a train. So go up and mine, drive down, dump on the train, dump on the train, dump on the train, dump on the train, dump on the train. Okay, good. Train's full. Now we take the train all the way down. It was a great update. They added the train lines. But we get down here and we have nothing but problems here, logistically speaking. So this is a problem area. And this is, I think it's very easily fixable by the devs. So for example, the first problem we have here is this dump area. One, it doesn't look great that you have to drive out into the sand and dump a truck here. So if you're going to take a truck, you come down the road, they should just put a piece of asphalt here so you can come in and back on there. This here should not be where it is. This should be right under this track. If they move this over, sunk it under the track, perfect. Because what you do is you come in with a train, you either come from this direction or you come from this direction and you drive straight over it. And you look at real life. There was a quote from it's from Star Citizen, but go to realism, then dial it back to fun. I assume it didn't come from Chris Roberts. He probably stole like he does everything else. But that's kind of the thing is you don't need hyper realism. You need to go to realism because things in real life work because they've been tested, and then you dial it back to fun. And they did that with the Space DLC. They made it so it's not too onerous. And so put this under here. Most of these or train cars IRL bottom dump. Some of them side dump. So if you make this wide enough where it goes under here and maybe even out on the skirts a little bit, you can either side dump or bottom dump. You take the long train that has, say, 20 cars, and you drive over it, dump, over it, dump, over it, over it, over it, over it, dump. You dump them all out. You come up here, and then this is where I have problems. The way these dump is they dump out of these funnels here, 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 and here. You have no clue they're not labeled. That's problem one. Two, they're at the terminus here. So what happens is you have to, before you dump your ore in here, you have to come up here, back the train down, drop one car, and it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So you have to make sure that if you're going to drop 10 cars, it can fit in one car. But if you drop more than 10 cars of ore, you're going to need to do a car swap here. So that's a pain. That doesn't make any sense. So what they should have done is this. You come down here, you drop, you drop, you drop, you drop. Then right under here, you have a pipe going over. Put the pipe across here, put a funnel there, label it, and put a button. So as the train car dumps here, it's empty, 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 empty. So we have, say, 5 empty cars. We still have 5 that are full of ore. As you pull up to here, you press the button. Well, what's it do? It dumps in the ore into the first train car, which is now empty. Then you're still unloading this car. Well, this one is filling. You pull up, hit the button again. It dumps. You dump your car. Dump your car. Now the train has gone through here, one place, and has dumped all of its unrefined ore, and it's left, and it now has all of its ore. Done. Okay, good. So now you head all the way up here, and you go to your next stage. Now this is for gold. This is silly, the way they have gold done. We'll talk about gold. But we'll come up here. Now you come here, the place you'd sell your ore. This makes no sense. It has the dump areas right here. So what do you have to do? You have to get off the train and you have to transfer the ore from the train cars onto, I use like a front end loader sometimes, or you have to put it on a truck to drive it this short distance to put it here. Where should these dumps be? Right under the tracks. So again, you take the train, you bottom dump, 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 and bingo, you've sold all of your metal. That's logistically speaking how it's done in real life and why it works. I know there's an add-on for it, but they should fix it natively. This just doesn't make any sense the way they did this. Gold is even worse. Gold is the worst, not only financially speaking because it costs you more money. It doesn't make as much money as other ones, and it's a lot more work because it's you lose 10% every time. Why am I over here? I didn't teleport over here, did I? So where the hell? I meant to teleport to brains. So the gold makes the least amount of sense from a logistics perspective. So gold, you come over here. Here's dirty gold, right? So gold-rich dirt. So this is actually a cool area. This is where I like to do gold. If I do it, I send out my stuff. I spawn them here. I come out. I get all my gold-rich dirt. I dump it into the back of a train. You should be able to then take the train and go all the way down the tracks here. And you should be able to come over here. Now, this is the only issue, one of the main issues we have with gold. So what we'd have to do, you have in the middle of the sand here, not connected to anything, you now have a whole train full of gold-rich dirt. Ideally, what you would do is, if you're going to dump it and move it by truck, you would have a bottom dump and a conveyor. They don't have that in there, so you'd have to build that. And then you have to make a separate trip. So you have to come down here with the train, then come over with a truck. You know, you should be able to come over here with the train. This facility, sorry guys, this facility here should be right here, right on the tracks. Why? I can drive a truck down this road, go into the facility, process. I can drive a train down, go into the facility, process. Same thing, bottom dumps, it goes into the facility. You come out to the funnel, you press a button, it dumps the gold in there. That's how you fix that. You can do it with both truck and train. Then you have to come back down here. And same thing, we have the same problem with here to go to the next stage of gold. Again, that would be fixed if we came in, we just dump, 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 back it up, fill, 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 and then we go over here, and we have another stage with gold, and bingo, look, we get to another building that we cannot operate with the train, which is right next to the train tracks. So what they should do is, again, put a bottom dump for gold, and then put an overhead conveyor funnel. And you should be able to dump, 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 dump gold, fill, 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 fill. Same thing, come up here. And then you can dump and sell here. That would make it make sense. But just logistically, Industrial Frontier doesn't work. And so I think a lot of the, that takes away the purpose of a lot of this rail line. For example, engineers of Stormworks, they love trains. They probably just love driving around with trains. They probably can still enjoy this. But if you're doing the train for the express purpose of doing metal ore, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's a pain. It's more work than it's worth. It's better than to just drive a truck down and drive a truck across. And so that's something they could do, and it's actually reasonably easy for them to fix that. They have all the assets in game. They just need to move some stuff, frankly. So that's my main issue with the Industrial Frontier and how they can fix it. It really isn't all that challenging to fix it. The main thing is you need to make this ore foundry work like a real ore foundry does in real life. And I've brought up pictures of this before. Let's find coal car. So if we look at some images of coal cars here, like this is a bottom dump coal car. You can watch YouTube videos of them in here. So here's them filling coal, right? You have a conveyor, it goes up, and it dumps down onto the cars. So the cars are top dumped with coal. And then they go out and they bottom dump. There's a, trying to see if I can find one dumping coal. So coal car, I'm just trying not to get a YouTube video that's going to boot the video. So like here's a rotary station for a rotary dumper. That's a little bit excessive on doing that, but there are bottom dumps. Here's a cool bottom dump. This is a video you can watch. So there is a bottom dump under this car. This thing's a vibrator. It goes on top. Giggity, and it spins an off-center weight, and it shakes the car so the coal goes down faster. That's how it's done in real life, and it makes sense. And then it drives out of the station, and so that makes perfect sense. And so if they took some of those real-life elements, they would have made Industrial Frontier better. And that's kind of my issue with it is they didn't really look at the, why am I spawning in random places? But they didn't really take some of the realistic elements they could have to make Industrial Frontier work. And so, at some point I'll do a video. I need to come up with, like make some add-ons where you can actually see it. They seem receptive to that, which is kind of cool. But, that's my main issues with that. And so it's made it so that a lot of people, Industrial Frontier is not rated all that well on the Steam page. And a lot of it's that is a lot of us want to play with it, but it is difficult to play with the content because it's all screwed up. It just doesn't make any sense. So I pretty much never want to use a train for metal because it doesn't make any sense, man. It's just I have to bring in 10 cars and I have to back up one car and I have to remember, okay, is this the right one? Okay, this is the right one. It drops it randomly on the ground. I only have 60 seconds to pick it up, so if I drop a bunch because I put the car into the wrong spout, now I've just lost like hours worth of work, and it just doesn't make any sense. Then I get over here. What I did last time, if you watched the episode of the build series, was I put the train here. There's a free vehicle bench here for cars. I spawned my front end loader. I drove my front end loader down, and then I use a spout on the side to fill the front end loader. I pull up the car, it dumps the metal in there. Then I back up and I dump it over here. It's silly, you know, where it should have the bottom dump. And you should be able to do this with both train and with a truck. And what would be even better, which this they won't do because it's too far, but for example, you have a nice bay right here. You should be able to pull in with metal with a barge. You know, it'd be awesome if you could say, you know, have a dock somewhere here. You know, I don't know, put a dock here. You come up, you get the metal, you go up, you dump it on a ship, you dump it on a ship. Now that holds an enormous amount of metal. And you now go down here, you know, and you know, you come in and if they put this closer to the thing, so they should have done it where it was dock, train, land. Give us every option to be able to utilize the facilities in whatever way we want. That would have been much better, I think. Yes, I was using Shift and Alt. Yep. Yeah, it retains the offset of the character. Yeah, but that, you know, that's something they could easily do to make sense. And this facility looks fine. They just, it's annoying that they didn't like do the final steps to make make it work like a real facility. And again, they're not logistics people. They could have done this research, but you know, so they seem receptive to 454's video. Maybe I'll make one on this. But that would fix this up, and that would make this much more useful. This is silliness coming into a terminus here. And like, I think this one maybe is iron, that one's steel, or this one's steel. I don't even remember. And we can only fit one car under here at a time. You know, so it's silly. You should be able to pull straight through. So as I'm dumping cars, I should be filling cars, and then I can leave. You know, and if you wanted to do, okay, this is for coal, or this is for iron, so you can dump your coal, you can dump your iron, and then this one gives you iron and steel, and then over on this side of this track, this is your gold. So if you have gold, you have to come over here, dump your gold here, and get more, you know, get the out product there. You know, that would be fine. That would be a good way to make it so you don't, you know, make some of this facility redundant and useless. But that would bring people back to Industrial Frontier, I think, is making it actually useful like that. But I'll have to do a video. They seem receptive to 454s, so I'll have to do it. All right, guys, I think I'm going to end it up there. Thank you guys for watching. That was looking forward to the DLC. I hope you guys are as well. Looks like it's a 75-25, so a quarter of the people in there, you know, are not planning on buying it, but 293 people, so I think that's a pretty good sample size for that. Definitely seems like it's going to be a fun DLC, and you know, again, not exactly what I was looking forward to, but I think it's going to be great. I think they went above and beyond in certain areas. Like, I never would have imagined they weren't going to use a loading screen to get up to the moon. I didn't think they were going to have a moon. I thought we'd get a space station that you could go up there and do some missions on. Definitely seems like they've gone above and beyond on this one. They talked about, you know, they've been working on this one for years, so I think it shows. And I'm hoping it's good. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.